The shattered metal of the command tower groaned, then gave way completely. Kalen plummeted toward the fiery chasm of the lower port, the heat already blistering his skin. Above him, glass rained down like jagged diamonds as High Autarch Velia Thorn breached the failing structure, her kinetic shielding flaring violently against the smoke. If you love stories where the line between enemy and ally shatters under pressure, join us as we uncover the highly classified files of the Cillian Citadel. That same blistering heat. The Elder records noted it radiated from the planetary scrubbers 12 cycles earlier, when the Cillian Council first reviewed the footage from Oakhaven Prime. A sharp hiss of static. The council chamber was usually a sanctuary of absolute silence, broken only by the low, rhythmic hum of the tactical displays. Now, those same hovering screens projected an unpredictable anomaly that threatened to unravel their entire worldview. The archival footage from the fungal world of Oakhaven Prime played on a continuous, maddening loop. A single human, his reconnaissance squad, entirely wiped out during what was supposed to be a quiet observation run, was systematically dismantling elite Cillian patrols. He did not fight with honorable plasma volleys. He fought like a cornered beast. He used crude gravity traps, turning the planet's own volatile bioluminescent veins into explosive tripwires. Impossible. He utilized guerrilla tactics that defied centuries of rigid ascendancy military doctrine. When Commander Kryn finally brought him to the Spire of Sealies, battered and heavily restrained in the medical wing, the Council expected a swift execution. Or rather, they demanded one. But High Autarch Velia Thorn did not authorize his death. She did not even allow an official interrogation tribunal. Instead, she entered the medical wing completely alone, abandoning her ceremonial armor. The Council watched the internal security feeds with mounting collective unease. Velia bypassed her most decorated generals entirely. She pulled a chair beside the human's recovery platform, studying Kalen's chaotic reasoning as if it held the encrypted secrets of the universe. What disturbed the observing elders most were not the human's defiant, sarcastic answers. It was the High Autarch's physical, involuntary reactions, the bioluminescent markings tracing the elegant curve of her neck, usually a cool, analytical blue during the most stressful diplomatic summits, flickered with a curious, unguarded violet whenever he spoke. It was a terribly subtle shift, a flush of color that spoke of fascination rather than tactical analysis. In the Cillian Citadel, biology was politics. Every shifting hue was scrutinized. Within 3 cycles, she granted him limited roaming access within the Citadel. The human ceased to be a mere prisoner. He became an impromptu advisor, standing beside the Autarch and dissecting the flaws in their own patrol routes. The council members exchanged darkened glances. They muttered of weakness. They warned that an extremist faction was already growing emboldened in the shadows of the lower port, furious at this glaring insult to their martial purity. They whispered that the Autarch was emotionally compromised, infected by human chaos. While Velia and Kalen debated strategy in the Sunlit Gardens, the extremists moved in the dark. They despised the human delegation of researchers currently housed in the lower port. They viewed the High Autarch's leniency as a terminal disease that needed immediate purging. The Council watched the data streams, fully aware that a structural failure was being engineered, yet paralyzed by their own rigid adherence to procedural debate. They did not intervene. They waited for the human's chaotic influence to finally destroy him. What happens when the ruler of a strict, logic-bound empire starts listening to the most unpredictable creature in the galaxy? The Elder records state that when the primary charges detonated beneath the lower port's structural supports, sending massive seismic shockwaves through the very bedrock of the Citadel, the paralyzed council immediately initiated automated lockdown protocols to protect the sovereign from the ensuing chaos. The smooth, polished obsidian of the viewing table felt remarkably cold against the Elder's resting palms as the tragedy unfolded on the hovering displays. Thick, acrid smoke rapidly consumed the localized data streams. The extremist faction had successfully trapped the human researchers within the collapsing command tower, a brutal and bloody statement against the sovereign's perceived leniency. It was an act of treason that would surely. The collective thought evaporated. High Autar Velia Thorn was no longer secure in the upper gardens. Through the shifting, corrupted static of the secondary security feeds, the council witnessed an unparalleled heresy unfolding in the armory. Commander Kryn, a decorated vanguard of the Ascendancy who had initially captured the human, was actively outfitting Kalen with lightweight Cillian combat, plating, and a military-grade ion torch. The anomaly did not attempt to flee in the confusion. He did not seek an escape pod. He plunged directly toward the blazing inferno of the lower port to retrieve his stranded people, moving with a desperate, frantic energy that no Cillian could predict. For a species that prided itself on logic, the human's complete disregard for his own statistical survival was utterly incomprehensible. Why run toward the fire? Why protect a commander who had bound him in restraints only days prior? The internal monitors inside the fractured tower provided a fragmented, terrifying spectacle of heat and collapsing architecture. The elders watched the human navigate the falling debris, his improvised tactics keeping Commander Kryn and the terrified civilians alive against impossible odds. They reached a widening structural chasm, the floor buckling violently under the intense thermal stress. Without a microsecond of hesitation, the human hurled Kryn and the researchers across the gap, sacrificing his own forward momentum to ensure their survival. And then, just as the shattered metal of the walkway gave way completely to plunge him into the fiery chasm below, the High Autarch arrived. They watched in stunned silence. Vaelia breached the thick, reinforced glass in a blinding flash of kinetic shielding, her momentum calculated to intercept his fatal descent midair. The telemetry data feeds spiked wildly, overloading the Council's screens with the sheer physical impact of the rescue. The image of their sovereign, risking the entire lineage of the Ascendancy for a single alien prisoner, sent a shockwave of profound horror through the viewing chamber. When the emergency extraction skimmer finally returned them to the medical bay, the governing elders immediately descended upon the wing, their robes sweeping across the polished floors in unified outrage. They demanded the human be exiled or executed for compromising the absolute authority of the crown, citing the extremist attack as definitive proof of his toxic, destabilizing influence. The Empire could not survive such glaring vulnerability. Instead, Vaelia stood before her highest generals, her ceremonial composure entirely shattered. She publicly rejected their ancient authority in a voice that left no room for debate, formally declaring Kalen a sanctioned liaison of the Empire. She claimed his chaotic survival had not weakened them, but saved them. The security feeds captured the exact moment the rigid history of the Cillian Ascendancy permanently fractured. The High Autarch stepped forward, pressing her forehead gently against the human's combat-stained brow in a deeply intimate vow of unbroken trust. Along the elegant curve of her neck, her bioluminescent markings burned a brilliant, unguarded violet. Would you have risked an entire empire for a single, unpredictable anomaly? We'll be here tomorrow to decode another classified file from the archives.